I just wanted to show my highest MMR I reached. I know it's not 1000. I know it's not 11,000 or 1100. I should say. I know there's a lot of players that have higher MMR, but for me, I think it's pretty good considering back in January I was struggling staying in the 800, and considering back in March and April I had a struggle to stay in the 900. So this is Master Kambai. Welcome to this new replay commentary. Today I got a guest. You can now present yourself.
Hi, everybody. This is mathbliz.
So,
For those of you who, I'm sorry.
oh, keep going. I thought you were done.
For those of you who don't know who I am a fairly high-rated player in Fog League on AWBW. Currently rank around 10th or 11th. Yeah, actually, I just lost the game to Izanagi, so I'm probably dropped down to like 13th or 14th. But I am reasonably proficient and have a decent understanding about the game. There's a couple schools of thought about how the game is played. There's people like Tordred who like to play super aggressive, just spam tanks and copters and try to mow you down. And then there's players like Hogat or Go who, don't get me wrong, they can absolutely do the same thing, but they kind of take their time and carefully plan out what they're going to do. I'm a bit more on that second end of being a bit of a planner slash prepper. I tend to spend like 4 or 5 days before I start a game on a map to think about what opening I want to do and how I want to move my units. And then after that, I basically play live.
That's good to know. And you lost to Izanagi, so it's still a very strong opponent. So I think it's fine losing to him.
Izanagi, that game, it was excellent. He came up with some very interesting things, and he called out the opening I was going to play exactly. So he basically played like he knew where all my units were, and he was 100% right.
That's very good.
Oh,
So, uh, what did you want it to add up?
I'm sorry?
Did you want it to add something up?
No. If we're gonna start talking about this replay, I just wanted to spend a bit of time talking about the map dynamics.
Yeah,
Um,
this is exactly what I was thinking about. What are your feelings toward this map? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? How do you see the map? The analysis of the map?
so at the time we're recording this, the map hasn't been out that long, maybe just like a week and a half. There's only been a few games that have played on it. Actually, my game against Cookie Lamb and Conpei's game against Starduster are probably the only actual high level gameplay. So it's a little early for me to be giving a like definitive thought about the map and whether or not it's good or bad. So instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think about when I see a map like this, um, and how I use that to influence my gameplay. So I'm going to say some things. I may violate those inside this replay because I literally walked into this game without having looked at the map at all when we started this. But I look at this map, and it reminds me a bit of this other map called Stolen Seconds, which used to be inside the map rotation. And what I mean to say by that is that there's three fronts here, right? There's this like center area, there's like this and the top and bottom areas by each comm tower. And those areas are separated. The avenues to get between those areas are a little bit choky. These like pipe seams in the middle and the forest tiles kind of make it difficult to switch fronts from one to another. Furthermore, the contested cities are mostly on the flanks. So if we look at the sides, thank you.
I thought I gave it by default, but now you have it.
If we look at the sides, the actual contested cities are going to be these two down here, the two in the center, and then these two up here. Now, in truth, there's actually 3 contested cities. This city, while it starts off in Red Fire's control, it can very easily switch control because of how difficult it is to reinforce this area. So really, the major amount of money inside this map comes from these 2 triangles of cities that are on the edge of the map. So you win by getting an income advantage by taking the majority of these cities. However, you cannot ignore the center. Even though there's a little bit of chokiness where it's hard to reinforce from one area to another, if you completely ignore this end center and they can set up shop there, then they can quickly reinforce and hit either side depending on where the units are. So this is a similar dynamic to Stolen Seconds, and basically the high-level strategy on these kinds of maps is that you start by rushing to the center and setting up armies, and typically because of the chokiness, you don't actually have an attack on either side. And so while the 2 armies are staring at each other, both people are trying to divert as few resources as possible to take over what is their strong side. So when we look at a map like this and we decide what the strong side is, that we can calculate. So the strong side is going to be this bottom side for the left and the top side for Blue Moon. So Red Fire is bottom, Blue Moon is top. And the reason for that is that infantry can reinforce into this area faster than they can on the reverse side. Are you good?
Perfect. We are back.
All right. I'm not quite sure. Oh, right. So the strong side is the bottom side for Red Fire, and the top side for Blue Moon. And the reason for that is that infantry have an easier time reinforcing and challenging these contested cities on those respective sides than they do on the opposite side. So typically, how these maps should go is that you want to expand out and get all of your cities on your side and maybe some contested cities, and then set up a push after the middle has stalled out. Set up a push on your strong side to take over this triangle of cities. All right, so there's another factor on this map that we need to take into account, which is that we have pre-deployed units. These infantries are on the sides. At the very start, they only have one job, which is to capture the city, because income is income. But then later in the game, they kind of shift between this airport and this base, giving you vision of both builds. Now, this is really important information, especially the airport, because the airport lets you know whether or not you need to build anti-air. And so there's this dynamic where you can choose to invest resources to kill the enemy infantry and deny them that vision, but the time it takes to do that is time that your vehicles aren't going out to the front and establishing presence. So by the time your viewers watch this, by the time you are watching this, it is quite possible we will have a definitive answer to, hey, do I kill off this infantry early? But right now it's not clear. At the very least, what my gut is telling me at this moment is that you should leave it alone. The infantry and the city should be left alone until the cities have owners, or we have a fight going on in the middle. And then once that fight has happened and there's contact, you can decide if you can spare the resources to kill that infantry. Now that's not what you're gonna see here. I'm gonna kill that fucker. But I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep this PG-13. I'm gonna kill that sucker. But it's not necessarily a good idea. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and just do a little bit of fast forwarding.
Before we go further, quick question: why did you pick hawke? Because this is a quite small map. Don't you think Von Bolt or Javier could be 2 better option over hawke?
So Javier is not a good option on this map. The reason why is that the comm towers are quite contestable. As any CO, maybe as Sasha you're going to have trouble against me, but as hawke or as Von Bolt, what you could do is you could just build a recon and park it on my comm tower down here, and that would win you the game. That alone would win you the game. So typically Javier is only good if your comm tower is indefensible, no, if your comm tower is like if it can't be contested, and yeah, that's about it. I do like playing Javier a lot. I like playing him on any map where he's viable, but he's very easy to cheese. So Javier's out. I think the reason I went for Hawk here is that I care less about the I care less about the size of the map and more with the funding amount. Now, 20,000's a little bit of a uh, it's a little bit of a like gray area. To be honest, Von Bolt's probably better, but I have a like affinity for Hawk. I just like playing him. So in general, unless I have a good reason not to, I kind of default to taking Hawk inside tier 1. That being said, totally understand Von Bolt as a pick. I'm sure he's very, very strong here.
Okay, that's good to know. And I wanted to say something else. Don't you think
Mm-hmm.
there's too many choke points for a fog map? Because usually all of these choke points are usually in standard. Is it the first map you see like that with that many choke points, or not really?
So it's a different style of map. Yes, most fog maps we are used to have an open center, but that doesn't mean that all of them have to have that, right? Like it's important that we have some diversity. And so I think this map is executed pretty well. The reason why is that, yeah, it's choky, but it's hard to choke. Like in a proper opening, right, you're going to be putting pressure in a lot of different areas. It's very difficult to choke every single place. And while a choke point is not like completely defended, it's possible to kind of like direct around. So like let's say you have the center like very like clogged up. It's not infeasible for me to gain control of like this force over here and then wrap around the back. This one's actually not a good example. It's the top side. So if you choke up this area, I can take control of this area and then use this passageway to unblock this area. Now that being said, yeah, this is chokier than we're used to, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay, that's very good to know. Okay, let's keep going.
So I'm going to fast forward through the opening up until I make my first mistake, which is pretty early on. I go for a little bit of a we'll call it an adventurous move with the tank that ends up costing me quite dearly. So Sasha is a very aggressive CO that likes to kind of overwhelm her opponent. She likes to like use her income advantage to have more vehicles, and then use the fact that she's the only one that gets powers until like turn 12 or 13 to really get an income lead at like turn 13, 14, and then use a like 4 to 5,000 income lead to out tech her opponents and just smother them to death. So the first mistake I make is that I spend this time building a transport copter, infantry, and artillery. And I'm doing this with the intention of taking over the city and killing that infantry. And the reason why I want to do this is that if I flip that city, that's 2,000 for me. And also, I get I make sure that you don't have vision of my build. Now, unfortunately, what this means is that I only have this recon and this tank coming out into the front, whereas you have an artillery and a tank, and you're going to have more things like further forward, which is going to bite me because I'm about to take a serious amount of damage on this tank. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Oh, I do want to bring up one thing. So this isn't reflected inside this game, but on this map, a day 3 recon from your weak side base is actually very, very good. And the reason why you want to build this is that it makes it reaches these two cities in time to prevent them from being taken by the opponent. So like this infantry, once it finishes capturing the con tower, can jump to this city, and only a recon is going to make it there fast enough to stop that cap. And it's easier to hold on to contested cities than it is to take them. So you really do want that early recon. Now I build it because I want to see what's going on in the map. And I didn't realize how important that dynamic was until the next game I played on this map. So here I go for a very aggressive placing of my tank. I did not expect you to have a tank there, and unfortunately, as you remember, I only have 2 vehicles out because I've dedicated resources to killing this infantry, and so once this tank takes damage, I am basically at your mercy on the contested front, and this is a very very bad thing for me. So it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse, and then we're gonna have a talk about, all right, how do you come back from a when you're behind. But this is already looking bad. Now I really really like this beginning artillery build. Because of how choky it is, artillery are very very good for denying cities. Exact placement of the artillery is a little fungible, not fungible. It's just like it's not clear where it should go. But I like that you built it, and I think in the when we eventually quote unquote solve this map, an artillery opening is very likely to be the correct opener. It's not clear where the correct pathing is for it. Sorry, let's recenter this. All right, so let's keep going. So I take some damage, I retreat my tank, and now I know that things are bad. So I start thinking, all right, how am I going to recover this? Well, so my plan is I just want to choke the center. If I can make sure you can't break through in the center, then eventually I'm going to be able to do the normal push on the bottom. That is just kind of how this map it just plays out. Like I'm just gonna have a natural advantage on the bottom and a push. You're gonna have a natural advantage at the top, but as long as I like stymie out your advantage of having more vehicles, it should be fine. And so a couple more captures.
Question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
That mech, why did you bought him?
So I bought this mech because when you build a transport, you have to think about how you're going to get value out of it. And the transport.
So we were speaking about transport before the phone call.
Yeah, and the mech.
Let's do this.
So when you build a transport, you have to think about what value that transport is going to get out of it, right? So one, it lets me take the city, that's 2,000, and lets me kill your infantry, that denies vision. But then after that, the transport needs to either be ferrying infantry to some place where they're useful, or bringing mech, because mech are cost-effective units, both for defense and for attack. And so my plan with this mech is I'm actually going to try to set a trap for you somewhere. I'm going to try to position a unit that looks kind of tasty for you to hit with a vehicle so that I can hit back with a mech. So that's the intention here. And that's kind of what I do here. I don't realize that you've left your tank inside this forest. And basically what I'm doing here is, as you've noticed, I've kind of left a tank in the back so that I can hit the tank if it hits this mech, or the mech protects this infantry. And I'm hoping that like this kind of chain is enough to dissuade you from attacking. Now what I don't know is that you've sent a ton of vehicles down this direction, which is kind of is gonna mess with the effectiveness of this little plan of mine. But that was what I was thinking at the time. Okay, so I go for a little bit of attack, and then you retaliate, and I see you have so many vehicles down here, and now this is critical. I am like on the verge of losing right here. Now, some things that help me. One is you build a mid tank. Mid tanks are good for defense. They're not good for attack. They're just too slow. If you had like just kept spamming out tanks from this point, that was one thing you could have done to win the game.
Really?
So, yeah. If you just spam tanks and just shove them at me, I think that would have won the game.
Okay, so here, like, I'm surprised of that because I value medium tank a lot. Now, after your statement, I do understand. I also think that statement is even more true in this map because of all of the forest. But like, when do you believe it should be the right time for a medium tank? Because you don't want to be the second player to have a medium tank, because if you are, then this means you are one medium tank behind. So how do you jungle with that? I know Deegis has a 3 tank rules. If you see 3 tanks on one of the fronts, you will make a medium tank, but what are your thoughts on that?
So Deejus's uh, Deejus's saying is like a very good rule of thumb. But what you have to keep in mind is that there's more than one way to deal with a medium tank. You can just run away from it. So when you see your opponent has a medium tank in one area, you can shove all your units into another area where presumably you'll have more tanks. Or there are other outs. Medium tanks take quite a bit of damage from both battlecopters and artillery, and so you have different ways of responding to them. And so typically, I won't build a medium tank unless I see my opponent has one, or I need it for like if I need it for its defensive purposes. To be completely fair, if you see two medium tanks, it's actually better to build a bomber in that situation than it is to build a neo tank or a medium tank in return.
Yeah.
And so, in general, I don't build medium tanks. Or when I build a medium tank, there's a very specific purpose. And that purpose is usually there's the city my opponent is using to like block me from doing something tactically. I'm going to build a medium tank so I can blow that unit off of the city. If something like that doesn't appear, I typically choose to instead build copter tank until I have a reason to build something bigger.
Okay, that's good thought process. I like it a lot. I think I will use this way more often.
Okay, so moving back to the game, I see you have 3 vehicles down here. And so in my head, what I'm thinking is, all right, so if he has vehicles down here, he had to be building it from this bottom base, which means that he doesn't have a lot of infantry. So that means I know you have a lot of infantry at the top with no vehicles, and a lot of vehicles at the bottom with no infantry. Now, that's not exactly true here, but I know that I have time. And basically what that time is I need to kill all of the infantry that I can see, and then use the time it takes for you to bring...
So let's keep going.
Okay, so I know that first off, I have a bit of a city advantage. I know that I'm going to capture the city, and I already have that city, and I've seen that you haven't captured the equivalent cities, which means as of right now, I should have like around the same amount of income advantage, and I still have my 10% bonus firepower. So I know you got me out-teched, but I'm betting that if I can just delay you from taking cities, which is a passive advantage that you can have, by like killing your infantry, then eventually I can stall your dynamic advantage of more vehicles and eventually make a comeback into this game. So this turn is all about killing all of your infantry and preserving as many of mine so that I can keep delaying your captures until I can do something. So that's what all of these attacks are aimed at. Just trying to kill your infantry while exposing mine as little as possible. And then here I go for an attack on your tank. Now the reason I do this is that I don't know you got an artillery here. Actually, in hindsight, maybe I should, like, based off my recon's previous vision, maybe I should have attacked from this square. But I go for this attack because I don't want you to get vehicle hits on my infantry. I need to keep my infantry as healthy as possible in order to prevent you from just capturing all of my cities and overwhelming me. So I go for this attack. I'm okay. I figure there's probably a tank here, and I am okay with that tank hitting this one, but I'm trying to just slow you down, delay your initial infantry until I can mount some kind of defense. And above all else, I'm trying to choke the heck out of this area. If I can keep your two sides separate, I might be able to pull something off. Now, at the same time, I'm also thinking in my head, hey, if I leave these infantry as juicy targets here and he like spends a turn killing them with his vehicles, I can use that time to collapse mid, and you fall for it. So here, this is a winning position for you. All you need to do in order to win the game on this turn is to take control of this area of the map so that you can join your vehicles that are down here with your vehicles that are coming, with your infantry and vehicles that are up here. If you can open this chestnut up, you win the game.
Why?
Now, instead, you surprise me, and now I'm even more like scared. and you spend a little bit of time killing these units with your vehicles, which is fine. But the issue with this is that these vehicles are going to take actually 2 turns to threaten anything in the center. And I'm going to use that time in order to keep like shoving vehicles forward and slowing you down.
But I'm wondering why did
Okay,
you
and then you,
said
yep.
if I link both army I would have won.
So if you link both armies, you'll have like a death ball. You'll have infantry and you'll have vehicles, and no matter what I send to that area, you can just mob it all. But right now, with these units separate, I can attack this glob, ignoring this, and then afterwards loop back around and hit them. So, just more delaying. Okay. And I know, because I saw where your vehicles went, that none of these vehicles can respond up here, which means, at least for this turn, I'm doing fine. You don't have enough to overwhelm me, which means that I have a bit more time to collapse. And this is another trap, right? So I've unloaded this mech here. So now what I'm hoping for is that your recon will hit this infantry, and I'll be able to hit back with the mech, which does happen. Okay, and then you build a second medium tank. Again, it's just too slow. It takes too much time to get to the front, and I am successfully delaying you in the extra time it takes for these vehicles to reach there. So you do another push. You're doing a good thing. You loop your tanks back up this direction. That may not have been necessary. You could have just collapsed and tried to crush this little kernel. And if you gain control of this, your armies link up, you win. Okay, so now I have successfully delayed you on both sides, and I'm still losing, but I'm doing my best to just stall you out more. So I kill this artillery because it's a very useful tool for hitting back at me. And again, I know your tanks are here. I think I saw them earlier. So I'm running away from where your tanks that were delayed down here are, and I'm betting that if I just keep running forward, that I'll be able to get free hits and take less damage. Now I don't quite get it right here. I think both of these tanks are actually in range to hit stuff, but it's reasonably successful. Okay, you hit back, and then so here is the next mistake you make. So generally when you attack, you want to have as few vehicle and infantry hits as possible. You generally want vehicles hitting other vehicles and infantry hitting other infantry. Here you take 4 hits on infantry with your tanks instead of on my vehicles, which means that in this coming turn, I can get a first strike on each one of those vehicles with my vehicles. Okay. And then your tanks are just in a very sad state.
Now, I do understand your point, and I do agree, and I think this is what cost me the game. But here's what I was thinking. I wanted to clear the path for my anti-air to strike your battlecopter, and I wasn't sure if my infantry were enough to really clear the path. But after thinking back, it wasn't worth it since it cost me the game.
You don't actually lose the game here. This is where you go from a crushing advantage to actually not even like a small advantage, just like this is no longer crushing, but it's still a severe advantage. Even after my next turn, I'm pretty sure that if we switch sides, I could win this. So I send my 1 HP tank in for scouting, and then I make sure I take first hits on each of your vehicles, and then I kill the anti-air, so that because most people only have 1 anti-air, so I'm hoping that my copters can go uncontested. To be completely honest, that was probably not the greatest idea, but it is what it is. So now I see, I think I saw the second mid-tank earlier. I'm trying to figure out when I saw it. See if I catch sight of it in this fighting. No, I don't. Okay, you keep it out of vision. But I build a second. I build a second artillery anyways. To help deal with your one mid tank. Okay, so again, fighting for my life, just trying to hold on. I've successfully killed off your infantry, which means that you are not getting an income advantage over me. Now, Sasha still has an income advantage, but you just have the Sasha advantage, no more on top. So we do another turn. Yep. See, you press in, and you get some good hits off, but I still have my tanks, and so now, again, we're just going to set up what I call a yeet fest, which is everything in the middle dies. The longer this takes, the better. Now, you make one mistake. Hold on. I think you make a mistake here. So from this position, it actually would have been better for you to let some of your tanks die to charge up your power meter. Because at the end of this turn, I am like dangerously close to a black wave. And in general, in the Hawk versus Sasha matchup, how it goes is, if in the early game I ever get a power off, I win. Because suddenly all your infantry no longer have 2-turn caps, and I get the defense bonus, and I get healing and damage to you. So this is actually probably the turn where you no longer have an advantage. You no longer have a like big advantage. You just have a slight advantage because you give me the chance to get a power. Now I'm still not winning. You are still out-tanking me, out-teching me. You still have more income than me. This is still good-ish for you. But at this point, I'm feeling more confident. So I scout a little bit, and then I start figuring out how to get my my black wave. And so I go for the attacks that I know I want to take. And then at some point, I think I might... Yeah, so I go for this infantry hit so that I can just get just enough to activate my power, and I get it. And that's what I'm talking about when I said that there's multiple ways to deal with a mid-tank, right? I don't have a mid-tank, but with an artillery and some tank hits and my power, I've already crippled one of your mid-tanks.
Yeah.
So I build a mid-tank anyways because I saw the second mid-tank, but I didn't need to. There's other ways to deal with it. Now, a brief note, this bomber was a terrible build just because I could see it. Because I can see the bomber, it's not good to build it. I don't have... You haven't seen me have any like big tanks to build, and typically a bomber wants to hit mid-tanks and neo-tanks. So once I see that bomber, I know I need a fighter. No questions asked.
Okay.
So I triple base skip for the fighter here.
Wow. If I was better, I think I could have won this because you triple faced it.
It was necessary. Anti-air aren't going to make it to the front in time. Also, you killed my only anti-air, so I need some kind of like air defense. And so I know you have copters still. I see you have a bomber. Fighter's the clear thing. The triple base skip isn't ideal, but I had to go for it.
Wow.
Okay. So just more attacking. All right. So here, I know that like situation is not great, but it's not it's not dire at this moment. I know that I have the counters for every unit that you have. So this turn, I set up a trap. Okay, so actually the very first thing I did when I started this turn was I checked the movement of this fighter. So I move the fighter as far as it'll go, making sure to keep it out of your range, and then I check to see if it will cover a tank that goes to this square. And so if we look at it, it does indeed. And so I know you have a bomber. I know where the bomber is because you destroyed this pipe seam. And now I send this tank out as a trap. I want your bomber to hit it so that I can destroy the bomber in one shot. And once that bomber is dead, we are finally even. I am no longer behind. I can win this. So then I get vision. Again, always kill infantry. Infantry are the lifeblood of the game. If I kill all your infantry, no matter how many vehicles well, not no matter how many, but as long as I kill your infantry, I can delay you from getting a crushing advantage. So I hit the copter. I want to make sure that it is the bomber that hits that tank. And then now what I'm thinking is, I know I have a artillery. So now I want to set up in such a way that that I want you to see one of my artillery and push into me to hit it. Because if you push into me, I built a mid tank, I'm going to be able to kill everything. So I set the artillery you don't know about inside a forest, and I put the other artillery someplace where I know you're going to be able to see it. Not right now, but you will on your turn. And so this is a trap. This is a trap which, if you push into me, we will be equal, and I will be able to win this. I know you have 1 million more infantry than me because I triple base skipped, but the trap has been set. So, all right. So here is. I just want to make a brief note. When you have Sasha's superpower is Terran. What would have been better here is for you to do a bunch of damage and then activate your power. And then chain your power like 3 turns in a row. Because then you're basically vulnerable, right? Because like powers give you +10/+10. And because of how much fighting is about to happen, if you were to do this, I wouldn't be able to kill your units.
Okay. Now, on my defense, I know how good her power is, and how her super isn't impressive, but my thought process when I used my super is we are probably even in terms of income, so I was like, okay, since we are even and you got a better firepower, this means I will need to find money elsewhere. So this is why I used my super, but looking back, I think I should have resigned at that point because I didn't know how to cut through you, but regardless, that's why I used my super. I was like, okay, I know we are probably even in income. Maybe I got the Sasha buff, and that's it. But then I had so many repair that I don't have that much money, and I'm Sasha. So this is why I used Market Crash, and it's really rare I use it. I use it only when I feel like we are similar in income and I need that extra money.
I understand. So here what you want to do is you want to pull back a little bit. Don't push into me. You want to pull your infantry back to locations where they can challenge me if I try to capture anything. And then you want to build more vehicles and bring them to the front lines, right? Like your anti-air is taking a heavy hit. Build another anti-air, bring it up to the front. You have enough recons. Build a bunch of tanks, bring them to the front. Build battle copters, bring them to the front. Also, this infantry back here on the city, it kind of spent the whole time just doing nothing. What might have been better is for you to like move it into the forest and like try to like, I don't know, hunt my infantry down.
Now,
but that matters less.
I understand your point, but I was actually really scared by your extra firepower, and I was like, maybe he will be able to kill my infantry, and if he's able to kill my infantry, he will be able to capture my city, so I will need another transport copter.
That's true, that makes sense. It's worth noting that even if I managed to kill that infantry, I would take a lot of damage, right? So let's say I get a first hit, it's like 8 on 5. You can hit back, and I think a 5 HP infantry would do like at least 2 damage, so it'll take me at least 4 turns to capture that city. And in that time, you could build a B-copter to kill it. So I wouldn't even go for the city. All I would do is just keep moving back and forth. The vision to me is much more valuable than that city's income.
Fair enough. I understand. I won't do that anymore.
You're good. Okay, so yeah, you fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. You push in right into the middle of all of my units, and if you look at my signature, this is where I typically say, "Here comes the bad news," and I'm just gonna go in and just murder everything. So trap is set. I managed to kill the bomber, and I kill most of your vehicles here. Get another black wave.
Oh my.
And at this point, I cannot stress this enough. I am not winning. I am not actually winning at this point. I'm doing very, very well. I have an advantage, but the game is far from over here.
I
So
resigned, I think, at that point.
you resigned here, but that wasn't actually necessary, right? Yes, I have a huge income lead right now, but it's worth noting that a lot of that is this fighter that I own, right? That's like 20,000.
Yeah.
So unless you have like a bunch of air units, that fighter isn't getting a lot done. So here I have a significant advantage. It's not nothing, but it's not as dire as you might have thought. And then you resign.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the game. You played well. You really caught me early, but I managed to claw back a victory by the skin of my teeth. But I gotta give you kudos. You played pretty well. There's just little choices that you made at different points where if you had done little things differently, you would have beaten me. Always try to join up your armies. Anytime that you have an advantage, just push for areas where I can't separate your armies or like choke you out in some way.
That's good to know, and this is funny because at the start of the game I was like, will I win? And then I realized everything collapsed in like 2 turns, so I was like, I had hopes.
For those of you watching, I just want to again summarize what to do when you're behind. First, pull back. Don't just keep throwing units into the meat grinder. Pull back a little bit. Kill all of your opponent's infantry, and try to bait them into overextending into you. If they overextend, you crush their army and you're equal again. It won't win you the game. Unless you're eagle, it's very rare that an overextension will win you the game. But typically you can negate any advantage they have with a little bit of tacticsing.
Thank you very much to come back
No problem.
again.
Thank you for having me again. Yeah.
Anytime, man. Is there anything else you would like to add before we end this?
No, not really. I think we've covered. I think that game was a very, very interesting game. It's worth noting that if you are checking these replays for things that you should do, basically nothing that I did that game in the first 8 turns are things you should do. But I hope that I have given at least a reasonable analysis of the map, and your viewers will find something useful. And hopefully it will still be true whenever this is released. It is very possible that by the time this is released, we will have a new meta for this map, which happens. There'll be a pivotable game between 2 players where there'll be a lot to learn, and suddenly the meta has changed. Like this happened. There's a map, Inland Waters, where for like a month and a half, the meta was set by Conte, where it was basically get like a few tanks and anti-airs into the center early, try to win control of the center, and then just copter spam your way to victory. That was the strategy that everyone followed for forever. And then Tordred comes in and is just like, if I like just build tanks from this base and shove them into your 2-city domino, I can deny that from you and get my own, and then use my income advantage to crush you. And now that's what everyone does. And it was a game of Tordred, I think, versus Conte, where he displayed that, and overnight the meta for that map changed. And that's probably what's going to happen for this map, and all of the maps currently that were just added into the pool. There's some analysis that you can do and like general rules of thumb, but then someone like really gets it, and the world changes overnight.
So that's very good to know. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. We will see each other in future video. Have a great day.